Hi everybody, Mrs. Wants here. Today we're going to talk about apostrophes. So what do apostrophes look like? Apostrophes look like a comma that's floating a little bit in the air, similar to the comma but up higher, not a semicolon. On Scout's punctuation difficulty scale, apostrophe is closer to the bottom than it is to the top, right underneath the colon and above the semicolon. Why do we care about apostrophes? Well, we always want to evolve our writing towards complexity without sacrificing clarity. We want to be able to write with clearness so that the reader understands exactly what we're thinking. How does an apostrophe help? Definition of an apostrophe is a punctuation mark that shows possession or shows that a letter has been left out. Possession just means ownership. So we're going to talk about possession with singular nouns, plural nouns, names, and names that end in S. Possession with a singular noun is super easy. Everybody's probably good at it by middle school. For example, the seagull's favorite food to steal was French fries. He typically swooped down and grabbed 2 at a time from a person's plate. So we can see we just add an apostrophe and an S if it's one seagull. We add an apostrophe and an S if it's one person. That's showing ownership. Possession with plural nouns is a little bit different. So this caused a problem with his flock. The seagull's overall reputation was being harmed. Students' plates are off limits, the other seagulls yelled. But the annoying seagull did not care or obey. So in this case, we have more than one seagull who's having their reputation being harmed. We have a flock of seagulls. So that word already has an S on it. And when we add the apostrophe, we do not need a second S. Same thing with the students. We have more than one student who's eating lunch, and that word already has an S. So we just add an apostrophe. We do not need a second S. Possession with names. So a name that doesn't end in an S, for example, Scout, is simple. Scout's dreams sometimes included the dog lion Hercules and the annoying nameless seagull. All we had to do was add the apostrophe and the S. Simple. Now, what if we have a name that already ends in an S? Hercules' dreams were impossible to know, for how can you ask a dog lion what he dreams? So in this case, Hercules already has an S at the end of it, and we're going to add our apostrophe, but now you have a choice. You can take option A and you can add your second S to that name, or you can choose option B and you can leave that S off. It's your choice. You do what you think looks best and what you want to do in this case. Now, what about omission? When we use an apostrophe to omit a letter, we're leaving the letter out. Here's some examples. Madam becomes ma'am. The roaring 1920s becomes the roaring 20s. Little Sebastian becomes Lil Sebastian. Contractions are something that you're very familiar with since elementary school, and that just means pushing 2 words together and then taking a letter out and using an apostrophe. Here's an example. Barney and Anahita could communicate with each other somehow, even though they didn't live together, but the wry beagle who wore glasses could not. So here's a quick shout out to Sebastian B. for drawing the wry beagle that we see here in the corner. So basically, the word didn't is just did not pushed together with the O taken out. Didn't. So here's an example of all of the contractions that use verbs and pronouns pushed together. These are words that you're probably mostly familiar with. We're not going to go into them. However, I wanted to point out the ones that end with an S, because this leads to a very common mistake that I see in middle school. Mistakes with apostrophes we're going to go into. So a lot of times I'm going to see apostrophes put in any old word that ends with S. For example, Barney likes to chase the rainbow mouse, but Anahita just wants to interview it. So in this case, we have 2 words that don't need apostrophes. Ask yourself, does the word possess something? Is the word missing any letters? If those 2 answers are no, you do not need an apostrophe. Just because you see an S doesn't mean you automatically put an apostrophe on it. So we fix it like that. Another common error is your or your. Barney's first interview question with the rainbow mouse would be, "What's your real name?" So in this case, we have to ask ourselves, do we mean you are or do we want your? What's you are real name? That doesn't sound right. So we're not going to push those two words together and use an apostrophe. We want this your. The same goes with there, or there. Anahita's goal was to catch the rainbow mouse and the annoying seagull to make them say their names. Well, there's three choices. Do we want they are names? Do we want their, the place, names? Or do we want their possessive names? So in this case, we want their names. It's showing possession. They own their own names. So that's the correct choice. Last one, it's or its. The rainbow mouse floated around in its bubble, and nobody, not even the girls who raised peacocks, knew if it had a body at all. So quick shout out to Ricardo L. for drawing the girls and the peacock that will be joining our series. So in this case, it is bubble or its bubble? Well, it's not it is bubble. That doesn't make sense. So it's its bubble. Now this is a little tricky because normally if you're showing possession, you are going to put an apostrophe and an S after that word. But this is an exception. Its bubble is already possessive. It doesn't need an apostrophe. So here's your challenge. Can you spot 6 apostrophe errors in these 5 sentences? So I encourage you to pause your video right now and see if you can find the 6 apostrophe errors, and then I will tell you right away. And a quick shout out to Francisco C. from Rio de Valle for drawing the orange bird. Okay, so here's your answer to number 1. The it should not have an apostrophe. Number 2, the your should have an apostrophe. Number 3, days should not have an apostrophe. Number 4, there's 2 mistakes here. There should not have an apostrophe, and birds should have an apostrophe. And finally, number 5, girls should not have an apostrophe. Hopefully you got all those right. That's it. We're done. You can go on to practice and feedback. Scout says good job in the end, and we will see you next time.